Up next on Inside the SCCA, from club racing roots to the top of the sports car world. Welcome to episode 209 of Inside the SCCA. This is the start of season number 5. I cannot believe we're at 5 seasons. Started about, 4 years ago almost, 5 years ago here. And with one little episode with another young driver. Well, he was a young driver then, and the one guy I'm going to talk to now was a young driver once too when he started in the SCCA. My first guest was a guy who's now trying to make it big in Europe in open wheels. And this guy made it big doing something as well. My guest today is someone I've wanted on this show for a very long time. Andy Lally is here with us. Andy, how are you, my friend?
Excellent. Pleasure. Good to be here and finally get on the show with you here.
Andy and I have known each other for many, many years, introduced by a good friend of ours, GW George Henderson, who I've talked about on the show a lot. We'll talk about him in a bit. But you have an interesting start to your motorsports career, and that's where we start basically every podcast, Andy. I ask a simple question. I've asked it to every first-time guest on the show, and you're going to get the royal treatment just like everyone else. How did you get mixed up in this crazy sport that we love?
So, long story short, when I was 4, I had a neighbor with a go-kart. And
Okay.
he lived, we had a small family, the block was like a bunch of young families, and there was this grassy knoll behind our house. And I would always take my big wheel or wagon or whatever it had with wheels on it, and I would go to the top of that hill, and I would fly down that hill, and then I would push it back up and then rinse and repeat and just have a blast. I was addicted to the speed and the fun of something with wheels going fast. And, my neighbor came out of his shed one day, and he was up the hill a little bit from us, and he was on a go-kart. So I was 4.5 or 5,
Right.
just maybe before 5. And I remember seeing this thing and seeing like it's a little car for little people.
Yeah.
I was like, that thing's awesome. And it was going relatively fast, but I wasn't kind of putting that together in my head. And he turned and he flew down the same hill that I always go down. And I noticed how much faster it was than my big wheel. But then where my mind was blown was he turned around and he drove it back up that hill almost as fast as he came down the hill. And for me, that was like an Everest. Like I would fly down this hill and then I would look back up this hill like, here we go. And I would like push my big wheel back up the hill, and it was like a trek. It was like a whole thing. And this guy just... I understood what a motor did at that point with a little bit of explanation from my dad, who basically sits at the top of the hill and waits for me to get tired so he can put me to bed later. So I got hooked on what a go-kart was. But then later on in life, through some slot car racing, through our friend GW, I understood what different things were and what road racing was, because the only thing I really knew was NASCAR and the Indy 500 maybe. And then through another friend of mine, also close by on Long Island, 2 friends of mine, my soccer coach, Pete Madsen, and lifelong friend that we just lost, Walter Simmeninger. And they got me into cars for the first time, and that was EMRA and the SCCA.
Nice. So your love affair with going downhill fast in things that don't have motors started a long, long time ago.
Yes, it did.
And what many people might not know is that you still do some of that downhill without motor stuff today.
Yes.
We'll get to that also. Your career path in things that go fast has been far from traditional. And I love that, and you are, well, let's get to this. When did you get to the SCCA for the first time?
In 1992, my soccer coach put together a meeting with Walter, and we had dinner at the Ground Round on Long Island, and did a handshake deal to do 3 races in EMRA.
Okay.
So the Eastern Road Racing Association, which is essentially like a ladder to
Yep.
SCCA. And so I raced Bridgehampton, Summit Point, and Pocono.
Okay.
And we did well together. We did it as teammates. We did the endurance races. But then I also did like the SCCA driving school that year as well to get my SCCA license and whatnot. So that would have been early 1993.
Right. For those not familiar, EMRA is like some of the other regional road racing groups like Midwest Council or Waterford Hills. EMRA was mostly Long Island, Pocono, right? Back in the day when it was the bridge.
So top northeast stuff.
And worked kind of in symmetry with the SCCA. They did their thing, but they had a lot of the same classes, so a lot of people did both. And then you quickly showed promise and ended up going to the runoffs in 94, 95, right?
Yes, sir. The same person that gave me a shot for the first 2 years in 93 and 94 in EMRA racing and then SCCA regional racing bought a Formula 440, which then turned, I think it's Formula 600 now.
It is
F6 or whatever they call it.
F6, yep.
But same thing. It's a motorcycle motor, snowmobile, clutch, belt drive, no shocks and springs, just bump rubbers off of rocker arms. It's a very funky setup. So essentially, you're flying around in nowadays a 600cc go-kart.
Yeah,
and it does Formula 4 times. Just without gears. So it's big gas pedal, big brake pedal, super lightweight. It's like 800 pounds or something insanely light like that. But it was fun, and that was my first year at nationals. Before then, getting an opportunity to race a Formula Continental car, and then the F2000.
You probably wouldn't recognize a current F6 car. They now have suspensions. They have motorcycle motors.
Oh, do they actually have suspension now? They actually have springs and shocks?
Well, they're not springs and shocks, but it's more than what you had.
Okay.
I made the mistake of calling them a go-kart on steroids in a broadcast once, and the Formula 6 community made it very, very clear to me that these were not go-karts with motorcycle motors.
I mean, it's cool. It's a wild little car, man. You got a short wheelbase, narrow track, and the thing hauls ass. Yeah.
Yes, they do. And you had a pretty good run at the runoffs in 95 and until it didn't go well, unfortunately.
Yeah, we were on the pole. I think we were fastest every session, and we were out front by, I don't know, 15 seconds or something like that. And there was this little square piece of aluminum that, through running up on the alligator curbs and the S's at Watkins Glen, I must have worn the rivets off or something. And one rivet was stayed on, and this little 8 by 8 inch piece of aluminum that was like part of like how you patch the floor together, and that thing was swinging out and coming back in around the corners, and nobody was near me, and there was like 5 laps left in the race, but they chose to meatball me. So
oh boy.
Oh well, that was a tough one.
Yep.
But it was cool. We went there, had fun. I enjoyed the runoff experience. Got to do it one more time the next year in '96. And then it's been now 28 years. I haven't been back. It'd be fun to go visit, though.
That'd be fun. Well, now you might have a chance to do so. We should find you a ride and get you down here.
Man, can I do a runoffs return 30 years later?
You absolutely can.
That would be cool.
How did you get from there? What was the next step after that?
Dumb luck.
Okay.
Is how I got from there to where I am right now. A few times a month, either a young driver or a young driver's dad reaches out to me, and they're like, what are the steps that you took? What are the rungs on the ladder? And it was not this, then this, then this, then this. It was like this, and then this over here, and then we did something over here, and then it kind of bounced back over here, and then I went this way, and it was like I ran whatever I could, and I would bother the heck out of anybody that I could to tell them I had my helmet with me and ready to jump in the car and this, that, and the other thing. And I would network like crazy back when networking actually did a little bit more than it does today, because the rides were cheaper and it was the tolerance for licensing was cheaper. I mean, you could still go do it in the SCCA and other competing things on that level, but like I could go to Daytona to the 24 and there'd be 80 cars out there and there'd be 16 blank names on those lists for different people and whatnot. And you actually had a chance to get in cars and you could go and test without having to spend a gazillion dollars on a license and all this stuff now. So it's much tougher for the young kids today, and the cubic dollars it takes is really tough. So it's a testament to the SCCA, and it's important to have clubs like the SCCA that you can go and you might be under the radar, which in reality, I tell a lot of parents, keep your kids under the radar while they're young. Let them make their mistakes with just mom, dad, and their best friend watching, instead of like having your 7th ever race be on television and inevitably you're going to now make a mistake in front of a million people.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they remember you for. So I came up very slowly through the ranks, just grabbing whatever opportunity I could. It was a long time before I got into anything high horsepower or anything. And I had 5 or 6 years of go-karting before I got into a car. So, yeah, it was a slow progress, but it was fairly uninterrupted. Like I just kept pushing and getting luck. 10 times I thought I was done and I was going to have to get a grown-up job. And that something last second would come through, or I'd get a job. Like I remember I got a job for Nissan and we were doing these ride and drive programs and I was on this 9-week tour and I thought, man, this is okay. I can make good money doing this. This will be kind of what I'll maybe do. And was still thinking about maybe being a firefighter or something like that. And I got a call from a team to come do an F2000 race. And they had lost their driver. And I went to Road Atlanta and hadn't been in that series for that year at that point, and won the race straight out of the box. And that got me my Team USA scholarship that year. That opened Jeremy Shaw's eyes up, and he invited me over to England, and that experience went well. Because we won that race, the team owner, Brian Utt, put me in for the rest of the season to race the Carver there. So it was there's been so many moments like that along the way. You know, the end of 97, I didn't think I had anything. And then Duncan Dayton gave me a shot in 1998 through some very weird interaction that he saw with me that in reality, and this is something for the younger drivers coming up there, he knew me as sort of a fierce competitor on the track, but he saw me do something off the track that I didn't know he was there and watching. And he just saw this instance of me doing something. And when he called me up in the off season, when I didn't think I had anything, he said, "Hey, you're the kind of guy we want," and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, "Cool, he thinks I'm fast." And he told me about this one instance, and it's too long of a story, but it was a non-racing thing that I was just kind of paying attention to. And he's like, he liked what he saw there and gave me a shot. And that turned my whole career around. That changed so much. So lots of stuff. Obviously, family support. Very young with my go-karts and stuff like that. And the first couple of years in cars with Walter Simmendinger and Tyrolean Motors and Pete Matson and my family there. Yeah, once we got up, there was plenty of years where I thought it was over, thought this was done. Yeah, it's wild.
You know, it's interesting. One of the things I vowed when I started this show was that I was going to give this platform to kids, youngsters wanting to make it in this business. And you know as well as I do that being able to have a conversation like you and I are having tonight is so important in the development of a young driver, because that off-the-track stuff, in many cases, I mean, you and I know drivers who aren't necessarily the most talented in this world, and they're driving professional cars because they can do all this off-the-track stuff really, really well. Not that they're bad drivers, but I certainly wouldn't consider them the top echelon behind the wheel. But they were able to get opportunities because they could sit and have a conversation like you and I having. They had an interaction like whatever the interaction was that you had that caught the eye of that owner. And that's so important.
Yeah. And honestly, and I tell this to every, like when we do I've been helping out with some of the judging for the Team USA scholarship for the last decade or so with Jeremy Shaw, and such an awesome program that he ran there for so long. I tell every one of those kids, you're going to, and I've said this a million times, but it's worth repeating every time, that any young driver that's listening, don't get bitter.
Yeah.
It is so easy to see someone that you think you're better than, or clearly are better than, get an opportunity before you that gets something in. And you're going to see that over and over and over and over again for so many different reasons. And you've got to shut up, suck it in, and just swallow it, send it, smile, congratulate them, and just keep on digging. You're going to get told no 99 times out of 100, and you've got to just go find that 1 in 100 and just play the odds. Be humble, go get embarrassed, go get told no, go get told you're a waste of time, and keep on digging, and know that there are better people than you that are giving up and giving you their spot.
Yeah.
As long as and don't be one of those people.
Yeah.
Don't give it.
There's always someone else who wants the car that you're driving, and there'll be someone who will be able to pay more money for it than you can.
Yeah.
So take advantage of those opportunities. How does you and I met through G-Dub Henderson, a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of yours, and who we lost a couple years ago during COVID. We actually have at the runoffs every year, my podcast, the Inside the SCCA podcast, is not an official SCCA award, but I give away the G-Dub Henderson Award of Excellence.
Awesome.
And it's a driver who I think exemplifies the passion. You know how the guy has the passion, or the gal. And I pick someone randomly. It is completely subjective. I make the choice. But I pick someone who kind of exemplifies what I think G-Dub would be impressed with. And we've given away 3 now. But how did you and G-Dub first meet? Where was that connection?
So G-Dub was running a slot car track in Northport on Long Island.
Sure he was.
And I went in there and I liked slot cars as a kid, a little bit younger. There was this place on Larkfield Road that I would go and race womp womps at on a little short track thing, and then they had a King road course, and then G-Dub had a hill climb that he was renting space in a place called Pitch and Putt. I think it was called Pitch and Putt at the time. It's been renamed a bunch of times. And I walked in there, had some stuff, was seeing that he was just getting going. He took it over for somebody had it, and they weren't running it well. And he came in and cleaned the place up, how to get going, and was like teaching us like what we needed to do to race. And he started a race series and stuff like that. So I was all in. It was awesome. And he was really cool, and he always wore this SCCA hat, and I didn't know what the heck it was. And he was telling me of the car that he used to have and that he's working on, but that he's also a flagger, and was explaining all that to me. So I got all of that explained just the year before I met Walter, and he took me there. So he was telling me all those stories, and honestly, G-Dub is probably one of the best ambassadors that SCCA's ever had. Unpaid, just jolly guy, awesome dude. I still stay in touch with his son Wes.
Yep. So do I.
And his wife Eve. And it's good dude, great dude, huge loss for the sport.
It's funny. I was living in Brooklyn when we met, and I hadn't met anybody in the Northeast yet. So much so, in my first race after moving to New York, I actually went to Summit Point because I knew some people at DC region. And there was no big internet at the time. I couldn't Google or so I finally got a phone number for this guy. You got to get a hold of G-Dub. So I get a hold of GW. Yeah, we're having a meeting out on Long Island. Come on out and come to the meeting. So here I am, young to New York, and I get on the Long Island Railroad and I go out to whatever train station he was at, and now I go back. I'm like I go to Long Island at night to a train station I've never been to get in a car with a big black guy. And
if I know the train station you went to too, that's not a very good place.
It's not. It was not. It was so sketch. And to think that we became, first of all, everybody who ever met G-Dub became a fast friend.
Oh, he's the mayor. He legit. He was just the mayor.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We immediately hooked, connected, and it was the start of one of my most cherished relationships and friendships over the years. So I know exactly of the moment that you spoke of there, and you're right. That's why we're all trying to send in nominations for him to become one of the members of the SCCA Hall of Fame, because you're right. The way you just phrased it, never a better ambassador for the club.
Never. And still in the 30 plus years that I've been involved with the SCCA, there has never one time been anybody that was the epitome of the perfect ambassador for the SCCA.
So you get to, I think when I first caught your name in pro racing, I heard G-Dub talking about you, but it was when you were with Grand Am. Mm-hmm. And when I got hired to go up to Watkins Glen to be the grunt on an American GT car. And I was just going to basically clean the front of the car after every session, whatever they wanted me to do. And and he said, if you're going up to a Grand Am, you got to hook up with Andy Lally. And I don't think we connected on that weekend, but that's when I first started hearing about you and kind of starting to follow your story. And then once G-Dub and I started the radio show together, you were on the show a couple times, and that's where we hooked up and met at Daytona, I think, the first time. And you told me you could be vegan and be cool, which I thought was pretty awesome. And not that I've become vegan. I tell people I'm a vegetarian with a pork problem.
Right.
But anyway, and all of this stuff. But when did sports cars kind of become that thing for you?
So it was a short 2-month window. In '99, I did the second half of the F2000 series when we won that race at Rhode Island and got a few more podiums and finished out the season there. In 2000, somebody that I was coaching, my buddy David Tannenbaum, asked what series I would run if I could run anything. Mm-hmm. And at the time, because the top seats in F2000 were taken and that budget was a little bit higher, and the money that was in the Barber Dodge series, I was like, man, I think if the Barber Dodge cars are actually equal, I'd like to get into those because there's actually prize money. And if you podium, you can get to the next race a lot easier because they actually had really decent prize money back then.
Right.
And so he's like, and race one had already happened in the season. They raced Sebring, but they were going to Homestead. And I got in, and we had a 25, 30 car field. Ryan Hunter was the $100,000 winner or something like that. So he was registered for rookie, and I registered for rookie of the year. I had really no intention in doing the whole season because this guy was like, let's just go to Homestead and see how it goes.
Right.
I was like, okay, cool. And Rick Radicek was helpful in getting me in last minute into something. And we finished third right out of the box at Homestead. And like back then it was like $12,000 to win. And it was like $12,000 to run a race. And then it was $8,000 and $6,000 for second and third. So it was like we had $6,000 in prize money. And the guy's like, awesome. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, cool. And so we went to Nazareth, an oval,
right,
and finished third there too.
Had you ever been on an oval before?
Yeah, in F2000, I'd raced Disney, the 1 mile there, Phoenix,
Sure. Okay.
on the oval there, and then we raced Charlotte and Atlanta, but we did it with a chicane, so it doesn't really count. But Phoenix and Disney were actually tough because it was like just flat on stickers.
Yeah.
And then it was hairy after that. So it was good. And so I finished third at Nazareth, and now I'm ahead of Hunter Ray in the rookie points because he had a bad race, even though he got to do Sebring already. And I'm like fourth in the championship. And it was like, holy cow. All right, cool. So he's like, and that was another 6,000. So he's like, let's do the next one. And we went to Lima. And John Fogerty sat on pole. I think I was fourth or fifth in qualifying, but made a really good start and got around a couple of the good guys there. And Ryan Hunter Ray wasn't having a good weekend there. We finished second. And so now I've got a third, and a second, and I'm like third in the championship points with missing a race. And we're like, this is cool. And now we got $8,000. So let's go to the next race. And so I went to the next race, which I think was Detroit. And I messed up in the race and I hit the wall.
Yeah.
And didn't total the car or anything like that, but enough that I think it was a DNF or something like that. I can't remember. I just tagged the wall coming out. It bent the toe link. The rear wheel was off. So it was a DNF, no prize money. And so I think we skipped a race. Skipped a race or two. So I was out of the championship. I honestly, I didn't think we'd get that far anyway. And that guy was so helpful in all of this stuff. And we went to Vancouver. He was like, let's go. Let's give it one more shot. Vancouver. Nobody's been on that one before. Street circuit. Hunter Ray qualifies pole. I qualify outside pole. And it was first lap, I followed him in, and then I crisscrossed him coming out of the second to last corner. I take the lead out of that, and he just drove right in the back of me and flipped me up into the wall. And that was my crash damage and no prize money. So that was our Bobber Dodge season. We came back for the season finale and finished third. But these guys were great and put me in cars, but that was getting me at least seen.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember the team, DSTP, Didi and the gang over there were running a Toyota Atlantic championship.
Okay.
It was Players Atlantic, Toyota Formula Atlantic, Toyota Atlantic. I think it was Toyota Atlantic at the time. And that was like the team.
Yeah.
That was like the big team. Buddy had just won the championship with that team. And I was one of 5 guys chosen for their shootout for their 2001 seat. So this is the end of 2000. I went to Buttonwillow. I'd never been to Buttonwillow before. It was the worst day of driving of my life. I overdrove the hell out of it. And it was the first time I had put my pressure on myself in a situation like that I didn't respond to the pressure well.
Okay.
And I remember some of the things I did was like, what are you doing? You're overdriving. Like I didn't know the track enough, and I kept overdriving a few corners, and it just wasn't a good performance. And I left there like, man, I totally blew my chance at going IndyCar just now. And I knew it. There was no way they were going to pick me. I didn't nobody else was even testing with me. They do a half day with me and a half day with the next guy. But I knew leaving there, I was like, it'd be a bad choice to pick me right now. I didn't do a good job with my feedback. I didn't do a good job getting the car right. I didn't diagnose stuff well. And so I didn't deserve it. And that was November of 2000. And it was, or very late October, something like that. And so I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'd done one Grand Am race that year. I raced an LMP2 car. I think it was called SRP2 back then. And it was a shot to last second deal. I jumped in as there was one guy that didn't want to race, and they had 3 guys. It was a 6-hour race. And I did well enough in the practice that they liked it. And I had another friend of mine, Mike Johnson, that was running a team,
Right.
starting a team there. And he had a guy from Canada that was coming over and wanted a coach slash driver. And so I got kind of a one-off shot for the Daytona 24. And so this is just 2 months later now.
Yeah.
And then we won that race, and that got me the gig for the rest of the season. And
So
we
your
won that
first time, Rolex 24, one shot, you win the race in your class.
And what an iconic year that was. That was when Dale and Dale were in the Corvette.
Yep.
I've got this really cool video. They keep posting it every once in a while. That Corvette was doing like 190 miles an hour. It was faster than the prototype 2 class. And it was just probably the same speed almost the same speed as the Riley and Scotts that were there. They were just opened up and going. And there's this really cool thing of Dale Earnhardt coming out of the bus stop, and I'm in a prototype, and I pop to the outside of a Porsche, and he pops to the outside, or no, he pops to the outside of me, and we're 3 wide. And this would be like February 4th, 2001.
Yeah.
So really just 2 weeks out. And I remember looking up, and those because I knew it was a vet, and I was such an Earnhardt fan.
Those goggles.
He was still in such an obvious Earnhardt helmet, and we had those thin nets. It was before we went to the rhythm thick stuff back in the day. And I was like, this is so cool. We won the race, but I'll never forget that moment. And it was so rad just being on the banking 3 wide with Dale Earnhardt. It was one of the coolest moments of my entire life.
Well, and at the moment, you had no idea, no one had obviously did, that 2 weeks later we'd lose Dale.
Yeah, that was mind-blowing.
And so many things came out of that, the Hans device and all these changes in safety that came from that situation. But it's funny that the first Rolex win that you have, the thing that you remember most was being passed by Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I did like 13 of the 24 hours that year, because that was the first time that the Lola SRP2 car was attempting a 24-hour race. So we had a very smart engineer, Brian Anderson, who really he clamped down on us. He's like, he gave us a lap time. He's like, you're not going any fast. I think it was like a 155 or something. I mean, it's slower than you would run in a GT3 car now by seconds, but it was a decent clip for back then. And he's like, 155, short shift. We're, like everything is chill. We're not going to go down the first gear in the horseshoe. We're going to save that gear. Our weak link is our trend. And so he set the weak links up, and we drove around that. And it was a tortoise and the hare event where, the green flag dropped. And I think we'd qualified 5th out of the 11 cars in that class or something like that. Nothing crazy. And we just sort of set our pace. And then fortunately it started raining. And nobody in my car wanted to drive in the rain. So I got to do a whole lot of driving. And that was, I was 26 and just so amped to be at Daytona that it put me in. Let me run. I think I slept for 5 minutes in the top of the hauler once, but that was about it. Yeah, it was awesome.
So
awesome experience.
2001, your first Rolex 24, you go out and win the thing. Now we're in 2025 by the time this airs.
Mm-hmm.
You are getting ready, because we're going to put this on. I think this will air before the Rolex 24. I have to go back and look at my schedule. But have you done every single Rolex 24 in the last 25 years? 24 years?
No, I've done the last 23 straight. So I won it in 2001, and then I didn't have a ride in 2002.
Got it.
And then I got picked up for the ride. I got picked up for my ride in 2002 after, basically the week after Daytona. So I had it for the rest of that. And then I don't think I missed a race. I don't think I missed a Grand Am race at all until a couple of years ago when Magnus chose to stop doing the full season. We just did the endurance. So, yeah. Yeah,
So
I had the most starts for quite a while until a couple of years ago.
so the 26-year-old Andy Lally wins his first Rolex 24. Did any idea in your brain, could your brain have comprehended the idea that now going into 2025, do you think this is your last Rolex 24? Or will you take a one-off if it's presented to you? I'm putting you on the spot now.
This is probably the only race that I would take a one off. Maybe the 6 hours of the Glen. Those are my two favorite
Okay.
races on. I would entertain it if it's the right thing, but I got to be in the right shape. I hate doing
Yeah,
anything half-assed.
sure.
So if this year goes by with Trans Am and I just don't get in the car much, we'll see. I mean, to be honest, uh, I don't. It's been so many. It's been 32 years of racing cars.
Yeah.
So appreciative of it. Um, but I have other things in my um, that keep me competitive. You know,
Yeah.
my jujitsu stuff, my MMA stuff, my street luge stuff. I kind of find my adrenaline there, and I think it'll be fun. I'm hoping
Yeah.
it'll be rewarding to work with the young up and coming kids in the series that I'm in now.
Got a lot of that to talk about here coming up. Any reflections here at the end of what's going to be 23 years in sports cars and all that you've accomplished? 5-time Rolex 24 class winner, always running up front, bringing teams up that raising their stature by having you on the team, and the successes that you've had. When you reflect back upon it, it's been a fantastic career as a race car driver.
I cannot complain. I've been, I mean, honestly, this success comes from being fortunate to be with great teams.
Yeah.
It's like the last 13 years with Magnus Racing has been incredible. With those 5 wins comes 6 second place finishes in this race as well. So and then 1 third place finish. So there's a dozen podiums in 24 attempts, I think. So I think this will be or 23 or 24 attempts. I missed 1 year. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's been pretty wild, and I've been pretty fortunate. And those wins don't come. You don't carry a car on your back for 24 hours.
Yeah.
That car's got to be pretty damn well prepared. And I've been really fortunate to have really the best of the best as well as far as crew guys for our winning cars, all the way from Mike Johnson in 2001 all the way through to what we've got now with Magnus Racing and a stellar group of guys there.
You know, a testament to the type of person that Andy is. I'm going to ask him to tell a quick story here. He doesn't know this one's coming. You win something pretty cool when you win a Rolex, right?
Yeah.
A Rolex.
You get a Rolex Daytona, which is named after, they named that the Rolex Daytona because for that race.
Right.
Yeah.
What have you done with your Rolexes?
So I've been extremely fortunate. I've got 8 because Rolex used to sponsor the Rolex Grand Am series. So they would give you one for the championship too. So I have 5 wins, and then I have 5 stainless watches that you get for the 24, and then they give you a stainless and gold watch for the championship. So I kept the first one. It's still sitting on my coffee maker right over here, and but I gave all the rest away. Those have gone to special people that have helped me out from the beginning. So those 7 watches are my mom, dad, stepdad, my soccer coach, Pete Matson, that put me in touch with Walter Simmeninger, who got my 2009 watch, Mike Johnson, who was my team owner in the first Daytona, that put me in there, and then honestly risked a lot just to keep me going for the rest of the 2001 season, and my sister. So
That's so
it's
cool.
it's been good. What are you going to keep all those watches for? You got to spread them out. It's cool that it makes people happy, and the people that have supported me, it's a nice, just a little something, honestly, to give back, because they've given up so much time and
Yeah.
effort for me.
Yeah, not that I have been in a position to buy one other than ones that you get from like, downtown New York City where the guy opens up his
Yeah.
jacket and you can pull I've got a Rolex for you. But I've always said for forever that I will never buy a Rolex. If I ever own one, it will be because for some reason I was part of a team in some way, shape, or form that wins one. And so that will be a watch. And I love watches, but that will be one that I will never buy a Rolex until I win one. So that is so cool. So there's so much other that I want to touch on, so much other stuff. So let me do this. I'm going to take a quick break here and thank the people who allow me to do this, and then we will come back and catch up on street luge, jiu-jitsu, and then this new job that you seem to have fallen into here, or I don't know which deal with the devil you made to get this job, but we're gonna talk about that coming up here real quick. I want to thank all the people here who allow us to do this happen. To do this, if you can look over my shoulder here, let's go this way. There we go. RaceSchool.com. They are our presenting sponsor for this year. Really happy to have them on board. They run a school out here at Buttonwillow and Willow Springs, and it is an SCCA full comp licensing school, and you can come here for one of their schools. If you pass it, you get your comp license. You just don't have to go. You actually have to pass it. But they do a bunch of other stuff. They have defensive driving school, high performance driving days. Really cool system that they use. Lots of one-on-one instructor time, and that is our presenting sponsor for 2025. And I can't thank them enough for being involved with us here. Also want to thank Solo Performance Specialties. They are at most of the Solo National Tour events. They are a huge supporter of our autocross program in the SCCA. Dave and his team are at all of those races. If you go there, or if you don't get to one of the events that he's at, you of course can catch him online and buy whatever you need for your solo program there, and check him out as well. We also want to thank Ray Esports, the official sim racing league of Inside the SCCA. Love racing with those guys. They, of course, are mostly racers, so they sim race more like race car drivers on the track, where they try to avoid hitting people, which is nice. We appreciate all of that, so we like playing with them. So that's awesome, too. And then, of course, Racekeeper is the official in-car camera of Inside the SCCA. All of those folks, you can find their information in the show notes, and you can help us out by going to them and telling them you found out about us here on Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. All right, we're back here with Andy Lally. Before we get to the big news here, I kind of put it in here. I put the lower third up with your title on it, and I'm like, oh wait, I shouldn't have put that up yet because we haven't talked about it. But we're going to talk about the new job in a second. You talked about your go-kart going down that hill, and you do this really badass thing. That's you come out here and do it a lot, out where I live out here in LA, and it's called street luge. I don't want to take a ton of time, but tell people what this crazy, stupid thing you do called street luge.
So I am in awe that a lot of auto racers don't get into this, because to me, once you try it, you're hooked. And we do street luge. Street luge racing is essentially like a longer customized skateboard, but it's got a pan. You sit in it very comfortably. It's got handles. It's got adjustable geometry in the trucks and different types of wheels and whatnot. And it's a gravity powered race vehicle. So we have sanctioned races that around the world, regional races around the country, and then World Cup races that go all around the world. And you can have a mellow hill where you're doing 45-ish miles an hour. In fact, Maryhill Loops Road right here is one of the more popular ones. It's like a 3-minute run down the hill. It is so fun. Takes me right back to being at the top of the hill with my big wheel and rolling down. It's just a little more speed, a little more complicated, but your racing lines fit right in to exactly how you pick this hill out. There's maybe a 5% difference. Sometimes you might go for a grade change over like the perfect trajectory. but then you also set your luge up the same way you set your car up. You get understeer, you get oversteer, you pay attention to that, and there's things to move around and set up on the luge, and it's so fun. WDSC and WGSF are the two sanctioning bodies. WDSC are the ones that put on the races around here. You can find the links to that on my Instagram page, which is at Andy Lally Racing, and it's really friendly atmosphere to get involved with, and so much fun. Our fastest races are usually in the low 70s as far as topping out mile an hour. I've got a video up on my on my Instagram page that's our last race in Tennessee last week, and it's an absolute blast. And you can get a top-notch luge for like under $1,000.
Really?
And then you get your safety gear. Yeah.
I outweigh you by a good 100 pounds. I'm afraid I couldn't stop the thing at any point in time. So,
so there are some hills where that weight's an advantage, and some hills where that weight's a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Somewhere kind of there's some give and take in the thing. It's like having that high horsepower Corvette on the straightaways, but then that little Miata in the corner is going to out handle you. And sometimes it comes out that that's the same lap time. So, but it's really cool like that. You get plenty of guys that are usually actually adding weight to their sled rather than looking for the lightweight stuff.
So this is the only time in the history of the world where I was referred to as a Corvette and you were referred to as a Miata. Victory!
There you go. Big power.
Oh, that is so cool. We have a lot of discussions on this show about fitness for motorsports. And, you don't have to be of the top physical fitness to participate, but it certainly is helpful, especially if you're at the top level of the game. And you have some fairly interesting fitness training tools that you use. One of which is are you a black belt now in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I am, yes.
That just happened, didn't it?
No, about 3 years ago.
Okay, somewhat recently. Yeah. That's another pretty badass thing. I'm gonna hold on a second. I'm gonna take down the graphic and I'm gonna bring you up on the full screen here, and you can lean into the camera just a little bit and show us. Yeah,
I just got that about an hour ago, right before I sat down for this podcast. I caught an elbow right in the eye in our training session. We had a little Christmas training session here, so I think. Yeah.
So
and same thing, which ear is it? My cauliflower ears are all messed up, and so through the years, you take your bumps and bruises, but for me, it's a red badge of courage kind of thing, and I don't care. It's all good.
So
it's so worth what you get out of it,
right?
And I hate running on a treadmill. I love mountain biking. So my mountain biking is kind of like my long distance endurance cardio and stuff like that. And the cardio is really of everything. That's the really important part. If you're a pretty healthy or above average healthy person, fitness wise, core, neck, shoulders, abs and stuff like that, you're going to be fine in the car. But there's some points where we're in the car 3+ hours, on the NASCAR side, the cup races I did last year, we had a couple that were really hot, and you got to be able to keep calm in the car, keep your heart rate a little lower. That's going to keep you a little bit cooler, but then you've also got to be conditioned to be, when I'm in Atlanta here and it's 95 degrees out and we set out mountain biking, you got to be ready to go do a couple hours and sweat your butt off and just, live in it.
So early in the show, you said when you started getting involved in racing, you really didn't know much about a lot of stuff. You were familiar with the Indy 500. You were familiar with NASCAR. And it was a dream come true. I remember we talked at Richmond. You did a full season with TRG in Cup Series.
Yeah.
How did that come about? And tell us about that experience.
So in 2006, we had won the championship in GT. And that year we were also down in Mexico City when at the time the Busch Series went there. And I was Kevin Buckler, my team owner at the time was, and like most sports car people do, kind of poo-poo the challenge of NASCAR. And I had always, these were my early heroes. You know, again, I've told the story a million times. I wanted to be in the Alabama gang. I was in New York, and I wanted to be in the Alabama gang before I could point to Alabama on the map. You know, I was a Bobby Allison fan, a Red Farmer fan, a Neil Bonnet fan. I love those guys. I love Richard Petty, and they as I got into go-karting and some young stars came in, I became a Davey Allison fan, of course. He
Sure.
was my favorite driver. And unfortunately, right when he passed was right as Jeff Gordon was coming through. I remember watching Jeff Gordon in the Pepsi car and the Thursday Night Thunder stuff when he was running sprint cars, and it was really, I had kind of the old guard was my first bit of, and then the new young guy, Davey and Jeff were real idols for
Yep.
me. What question did you ask me?
I mean, just tell us about that experience, because
Right.
the NASCAR world feels like it's kind of closed off to people from other disciplines, although that's changed now a lot.
Yeah, it is quite different. That's right. So I was telling Buckler, I'm like if you want to really blow up and I would tell every
Yeah.
team owner I ever worked for, like if you want to really blow up the team and really get big, like you got to go NASCAR. It's bigger than the sports car stuff. And he got saw how the crowd reacted at Mexico City, and then Chip Ganassi was running a Daytona prototype at the time, and so were they. So they were close enough, and had a conversation with him. And at the end, kept pushing. And at the end, middle of 2007, decided to make a move that direction. And we did a couple of did my 3 ARCA races, and did 2 truck races, maybe 3 truck races. And they bought some old equipment. It was a bad move. We bought some old trucks that sucked, and entered the truck series. And it was a wild experience. I got like 6 or 7 races in, and it pretty much ran out of funding, unfortunately. Typical,
Sure.
like, went in, overdid stuff. And then I was out of a ride and back in sports cars, still in the same team. And then the next year, they added a second car at Watkins Glen in the Cup Series. And at this point, I'd done 3 ARCA races, 6 truck races. And they're like, all right, we're going to go do a Cup race. And I was like, okay, holy cow. And so I don't think a lot of people really understand how much of a step up it is. And the cars are, those guys are really good. They run Watkins Glen and Sonoma like nonstop. Like, they've been going there for years. So to try to show up and do good with a small team that, we don't have an engineer, we just have a crew chief. At the time, I actually had Slugger Labby, who works for Toyota now. Awesome. I didn't realize really what I even had with him. He was so good with everything, and good with me, and put a good car together. And we were, a non-locked in team. We were a go or go homer at the time.
Yep.
And there was, 43 cars got in the field back then, and there was 46 or 47 cars there. So there was a good chance if we didn't make it, we were going home. And my teammate was right in front of me in qualifying and missed the show. And he leans in the window. He's like, you got to go really fast. He's like, we got to make this race because we need the prize money to keep the lights on. And so I threw down probably one of my better laps. You can find it on YouTube, I think. One of the better laps I've ever thrown down. And we took that little car and qualified 15th with it, which was so cool because Grand Am was the support race that weekend. And our drivers meeting for Grand Am was going on, which is in the tower, just overlooking like the front straightaway behind the pits. And so the drivers meeting was going on, and they paused because I was qualifying during the drivers meeting, and we threw it 15th on the board. And I got a bunch of my friends that came out and congratulated me as we pulled back in the pit. So it was a very, very surreal and cool moment. And then I did a couple of start and park races at the end of 2010, and then they lost their driver. And then we won the 2011 Daytona 24, and at the end of that week, they announced that I was going to go full-time Cup racing. So it was crazy. We did. I didn't do. I did 30 of the 36 races because they actually, again, we were way underfunded, and so they sold a handful of the races to a guy that had his own sponsor. There was a guy from Virginia that wanted to do both Martinsville races, one of the Charlotte races, some other stuff. But it was still an amazing experience. We would get our ass kicked. So we bought 3 Roush cars. They came from Roush with the pickup points literally cut out of the car. So we took it down to Hopkins, who does truck chassis, and he put like a generic, I don't want to say generic, but he put like basically kind of like what they do on the truck stuff on the front end, and we race stuff. And again, no engineer, no pull down. My crew chief was just digging.
No shaker rig.
No shaker rig. We weren't doing any of that stuff. We weren't doing what probably 90% of the field was doing. And I still, to this day, would do it again.
Yeah.
It was the best time I ever had being completely miserable.
Yeah.
Because I knew I knew it didn't look good for me. I knew there was a bunch of people that could see what our program was, but maybe not understand it, or if I wasn't outperforming anyway, there wasn't going to be a chance. And so about two-thirds of the way through the year, I saw the writing on the wall. There was financial problems. We barely had cars to make races and stuff like that. And John Potter had given me a ring and said, "Hey, you going to stay in NASCAR?" And I'm like, "Depends. You thinking about making a change over there?" And he said yes. And so by probably September of that year, 2 months before the end of the season, I had a handshake deal that I was gonna move back to sports car racing full time, and that was a great decision because it's so rare in this game that you. This will be 2020. Yeah, so this will be the 2025 would be the start of my 14th season with Magnus Racing.
Yeah,
which is just insane. It's just incredible. So
cool.
There's just not too many runs where you get a driver, team owner, co-driver pairing that lasts that long. So
how many people out there? There's a handful of people who've won a Rolex, won at Le Mans, won at Indy. That's kind of like one of the trifectas out there. I know Juan Pablo, I think, has all of those possibly. How many people out there have a Rolex 24 watch and a NASCAR Rookie of the Year trophy on their shelf? A Cup Series Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I'm going to guess it's just one.
Yeah, let's see. I've had Brendan Gaughan as a teammate that we've won together. I know Casey Mears has won together. I don't know if either of those two got Rookie of the Year when they came in. I'm trying to think of other NASCAR drivers. Did Pruitt ever do a full season of NASCAR to get Rookie of the Year?
I don't know. Hold on a second. I'm pulling up Cup Series Rookies of the Year on Wikipedia right now while we're talking.
Let's see. Yeah, you'd have to go back to maybe a Mark Martin or something like that won the Daytona 24 with Roush. I don't know if he was Rookie of the Year that year, but that would be cool to share that with him. Maybe Mark. Mark might be one of the only ones. Mark and Tommy Kendall teamed up for a couple of wins in a Roush, basically Trans Am Mustang.
I'm thinking also Juan Pablo.
Oh, right.
Yep. So
Was Juan? Did he get Rookie of the Year
he
that
did.
year? Okay.
He was the Rookie of the
And
Year in 2007.
okay, then I'm pretty sure he won it. I'm pretty sure he won one with Ganassi then in the Daytona prototypes.
Has Jamie McMurray won a Rolex?
You know what? I think he might have been in the car with Casey Mears when they won that with maybe.
And did Jeff
Yeah.
Gordon win a Rolex? I think he won.
Oh yes. Jeff won with Ricky and Wayne Taylor Motorsports. Yeah. In fact, I think both Taylor brothers. I think it was both Taylor brothers, Jeff, and a Japanese driver. I can't remember
Yeah.
his name. Won with Taylor Racing there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Alabama game, you share the Rookie of the Year also in Cup with Donnie Allison and Dale Earnhardt Jr., not part of the Alabama gang. Did Davey win Rookie of the Year? I'm trying to see here.
Yeah, he must have because he was way high. He was like third in the championship, I think, in his rookie year. He was like way up there.
Yeah. But yeah, some pretty good. Oh yeah, Davey won at 87. So yeah, you're in some pretty good company in a lot of different lists, aren't you?
Yeah, so I want to just clarify something. I do not hang my hat on the 2011 NASCAR Rookie of the Year. There are plenty of haters out there that like it was. I didn't do the whole season. Brian Keselowski, who's Brad Keselowski's brother, he did a handful of races. TJ Bell did a handful of races. I did the most, so I basically won it by default.
That's
but
okay.
I never flagged that I won the Rookie of the Year in the NASCAR series. I put other better results forward over that. People tend to mention that, and you know what? It's so cool to have done that. And it's neat as heck, but I look at it as a really cool feeling and an experience, but it's not like a feather in my cap that I go brag about.
That's okay.
Because of just we didn't have enough competition.
All right, so I try to keep these to an hour, but we're at an hour, but we haven't gotten to the good stuff yet. So can I keep you for another 10 or 15 minutes?
Yeah, man, take your time.
All right,
good.
let's do it. So when I asked you to do the show, I wanted someone special on for the start of season number 5, and I've been wanting to try to get you on the show for a long time. And you're a busy guy, so this was going to work out. And you said great, but I can't do it right now. There's something I can probably talk about if we wait a couple of weeks to do it. I didn't know what it was. And you were really good at being quiet about it because I'm sure I wouldn't have told anybody, but you didn't tell me. And then all of a sudden, news started popping. My phone, I got a text message to hear about Andy Lally. And gosh darn it, you're a race car driver. So when I get, did you hear about Andy Lally?
Yeah.
I think the worst. And I'm like, God, no, please no. And then in like 15 seconds later, I just happened to look at that text like right when it came in. And then 15 seconds later, he's the new president or the new head guy. I remember what the text was, at Trans Am. And I was like, what? I didn't even know you were planning to retire yet. And I'm like, okay, well now I know why you didn't want to talk to me. So how did that all come about?
So it's funny. In July, I was lucky enough to be offered a seat in the All-Star race at Lime Rock Park for the IROC Revival.
Oh, cool.
And this was a collection of Ray Everham's cars that he had with all these amazing refurbished IROC racers, and then comboed it with the Trans Am Series doing an All-Star race, which was a combo of the Young Guns in the Trans Am Series and then some all-stars, legends, whatever you want to call them. And I was honored and asked by one of the teams, my buddy Nick at Nitro, if I would want to team up. And I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
As soon as I had heard this announcement back in February that they were doing this, I was like, oh, I want to do that so bad. How cool would that be? That would be so, because I've been wanting to run a TA2 car for a long time. I've been fortunate. I did 2 Trans Am races, but I hadn't run the TA2 platform, and I really loved the look of that platform. And a bunch of my friends had raced that car had just said it's so much fun. It's such a good series. And so I was I was chomping at the bit. So I got an offer to do it. While I was there, I'm still, this is July of 2024. It's just a handful of months ago. I still go to the track and network like I'm 19. Still got to make friends, still got to meet people, still got to do whatever. I went up and I introduced myself to Tony Perella. Tony and I had met a handful of times casually, just in passing, not sit down and have a dinner or anything like that. And I just introduced myself, said hi again, good to see you, let's chat. We had something else that we were chatting about, something in common that we were in a shared space. And as we started talking more during the weekend, we started talking about other things, and that started in July, and just sort of through August, through September, these questions started coming up. And he hit me with that, and I was like, holy cow. Like I hadn't ever seen myself do something in that role before.
Okay.
Maybe because I honestly didn't think I'd get put straight into that role. Like
Right.
I'd have to do some time, other places, doing other officiating and whatnot. And I'm too unfiltered to do that. I'm probably going to get in trouble doing this as it is. Because I can't keep my mouth shut if I'm not satisfied with something, or I think something's not in the right place. So John Potter's put up with me for over a decade now, and he's sort of a similar guy too, so I think he actually appreciates it. But this came up, and it's one of those things where Tony was giving me an opportunity that was a once-in-a-lifetime potential chance.
Yeah.
And so I just looked at things. I'm coming up on 50 years old. For years, I'd been looking at who stayed sharp past 50.
Okay.
And it wasn't a lot of guys.
Yeah.
And it's easy to, we have a shelf life as drivers. There's going to be a point where our reactions are going to slow down, and this or that's going to happen, and whatever, your eyesight's going. It's coming. It's a sad but true thing of life, and it'll happen, and I'll slow down. I still think I'm there or pretty darn close to there, but maybe I had a chance to hang on for another 1, 2, 3 years doing something, or do I think big picture?
Yeah.
And go, hey man, you've had an amazing career. I've checked every box I want to check in auto racing, except winning in one of the big three in NASCAR.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing. And honestly, that's probably past me. I'm not closing, the door to it, but I'm just being realistic.
Yeah.
There's very few times that they're like, let's give this cool 50-year-old a shot over like an 18, 16-year-old kid
Right.
or whatever nowadays that are getting shot super early. But with that in mind, I was like, this is something that I can do from 50 to 60.
Yeah.
Or longer if I wanted to, if I can apply myself and do it right.
Yeah.
So my contract with Magnus extends through the 24 Hours of Daytona this year, but I started officially as the Trans Am president on December 4th. And that was the decision to retire and go into that was something I had to think about for quite a while. We had months to where I was going back, like, is this the right time? And honestly, at the end of the day, it really wasn't a super hard decision. This was, I've had a great time and I've had great opportunities, and I am going to try to make this the next great opportunity because I love. So I love the series. My favorite kind of racing is stock cars on road courses, and that's Trans Am.
Right.
TA2 is it's a straight late model on road courses, and they race so well and so fun. And then you've got this insane Trans Am class, 5-speed, like some of these guys are at like 900 horsepower and only 2,800 plus pounds. on this thing. I mean, they're pulling wheelies over the top of Lime Rock, and they're doing 200 plus miles an hour when they used to go to Daytona.
Yeah.
It's insane. I did 185 miles an hour in the back straight at Road Atlanta, shaking someone's car down a couple of years ago, and it was like, oh my God, this thing is absolutely hauling butt. It's so cool. So to be able to jump in and try to be a part of a team that's doing a good job shaping old school American racing with the Trans Am class, and then building a platform that is so vital to NASCAR future superstars, because there's so many road courses on the schedule. So they can go from a Trans Am 2 car, which is super applicable to how an Xfinity car feels, and there's even 3 truck road course races and some ARCA road course races, and really pick up their road racing in heavy cars that don't have driver ends. And so I'm super psyched for it.
So the relationship between Trans Am and SCCA is both storied and sordid.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest time, Trans Am was the cornerstone pro series that the SCCA ran. And there was also Formula Super V back in the day, and Toyota Atlantic had some relationships before it was Toyota Atlantic. But for the longest time, Trans Am, going back all the way to Mark Donahue, and I mean way in the Wayback Machine.
60s, yeah.
In recent years, there's been a love-hate relationship kind of between the club and the pro side of the SCCA. They're very different organizations. They are sanctioned by the SCCA, but they aren't run by the same people anymore. And also for many years, the SCCA was a stepping stone to stuff. I felt like in the 2000s, 2010s, that kind of went away for a while. Not a lot of SCCA drivers were getting a chance to step up to pro racing for lots of different reasons. That seems to be changing a little bit now. We've got some young guys who are now in the Pirelli, the Michelin World Challenge, not the Michelin World Challenge, Pilot Challenge. We've got some young guys. Connor Zilic has popped up now, and he's got a NASCAR future. Morgan Burkhart is now just signed with a Porsche team for the Pilot Challenge. So more things are happening. Do you see your involvement in Trans Am starting to bridge that gap again, so that SCCA drivers, club racing drivers, can see that as a path now to get to either NASCAR or to sports cars?
Well, we've got a bunch of different directions we can go. And one of my biggest tasks is going to be choosing what that direction is. I want to keep old school Trans Am racing, the TA class, as close to what we have now as possible. Obviously, costs are going up, and that's tough. And so we're trying to get car count in. We're announcing the GT1 class for 2025, which is basically taking eligible Trans Am cars from back in the day that had not yet converted to the bigger brakes and the 18-inch wheel that we went to when we went on the Pirelli, and we're starting a separate class for them. And I think between Trans Am, GT1, and I'm doing my best to try to reach out to everybody that's mothballed the GT1 car or been around something that for some reason haven't been satisfied with whatever they've been racing, and kind of pull them back onto the Trans Am side and see if we can get them going. You've got 9 eligible races, of which you take 6, your best 6 finishes, and that's our championship. And then we've got another new class called TA Cup, which is very high horsepower motor, but spec class. And so that's what we're trying to build that field. I want to see the big wide body silhouettes of the way these things are, just squatted low, mean, and super loud, all in one big class here. So that's my goal here, while we also still tend to our TA2 class, which is massively attended, and we get up to 38, 40 cars at some of our bigger races. And we have such a range. We have a Pro-Am class in there for the gentleman drivers, essentially like what you would be if you were a bronze driver. And these cars it's like it's like an eighth of a budget of what you need to do some of the bigger series and
Right.
whatnot. And you have amazing door-to-door battles with fiberglass bodywork, by the way, fiberglass Kevlar bodywork and stuff like that. So you're not, shredding a $20,000 fender. You can go out
Yeah.
there and go have some fun, and it's pretty wild. So it's a great class. There are Connor Zilic coming through TA2 has put that class even more on the map than it already was. Brent Cruz, another superstar. I got fortunate to be teamed up with him. We've got a bunch of young guys through here. We had a 15-year-old winner last year, Ben Meyer and Thomas Annunziata. A lot of really good, solid kids. And then you've got your vets. Your Merrills and your Sheehans and your Matos. Andretti, just good guys that are battling out in that class because they love that class,
Yeah.
And so I love the TA2 side because you've got vets that are like they're the bar. And so you don't have just a field of 16, 17, or 18-year-old kids that if you win it, you're like, are these guys good?
Yeah.
Because you've got some really solid baseline guys in there that are winning championships, vets, older guys that these guys can sort of emulate and learn from. And we're seeing them learn because they're fast.
Yeah.
They really are. It's amazing. This is, TA2 is stock car road racing that you get in at the youngest age, more than anything you can get in an ARCA or any of the NASCAR Big Three. So it really does prepare you for that next step up the ladder.
Yeah. Our GT1 class today is not the highest subscribed class in the club anymore. Used to be, the two premier races at the runoffs that everyone would go to the fence line to watch were Trans Am, were GT1 and Formula Atlantic. Both of those classes are not what they used to be, not the numbers that they had. And it's interesting to me that this Trans Am series right now has completely blown up, but it's not helping the club very much in that GT1 class. And I've struggled to find a way to make that work. And I'm hoping that maybe you guys can start having discussions and find ways where there can be some back and forth between the club racer and the Trans Am guys.
Yeah, I mean that's we're making GT1 so that you don't have to change a single thing from your SCCA car to come on over. And maybe, and I'm not knocking anything SCCA is doing, on the national level or the regional level or anything like that. Just some people might want a different taste or a different experience or different, or maybe they're a Chris Dyson fan or an Amy Ruman fan or a Dreesy fan or a Paul Menard fan, and it'd be cool to share a track with them.
Yeah.
And one of our weekends. So see how they measure up and bring their car out. And we're going to make sure that those cars, if you've got the H pattern, you're going to be lighter. If you've got the 16-inch wheel, you're going to be even more lighter. If you've got the old bodywork on it, you're going to be lighter again. So you've actually got a chance to be pretty light relative to what these cars can weigh and have a quick, nimble car out there. So it should be good.
So I just scrolled through the list of drivers in Trans Am right now. A lot of these are guys you've raced against over the years.
Every single one. Yeah.
How is I'm now the guy who's got to get. You're going to take their calls to complain. You're going to have to maybe have hard discussions with some of these drivers.
Oh, brother, I already am. I've been on the job for 3 weeks, and it's been phone call after phone call of complaint every single day. But that's fine because I'm okay with that. I can have a very charged, fired up discussion with somebody and still try to filter down to the important points that were meant there. If somebody calls me up, amped up and ticked off and whatever, and this is crazy, this is whatever, it's really a relatively short time that they stay like that because I'm okay trying to direct that to a logical conversation and get there. I explain to them, I'm fine with you being mad because I've been mad. I've forced my way into lots of different trailers and stuff like that over the year with quite a short fuse on something that I think demanded or needed attention quickly. And so I get it. And so I'm empathetic to that. And I think that helps actually calm the situation a good bit. So I'm going to try to be sort of the forward-facing, team-facing representative from our staff. We've got great guys in there, and I'm going to try to add and assist in every. I don't want to run every department at all. I just want to assist where I can with my experience and have input. And sometimes it's not. It's any reasonably experienced guy is going to be an appreciated second set of hands, or a different point of view, or just you know like we've got a great race director in Tim Richter, but he's got his hands full because we've got so many races and so many classes going on and so much to look at. And then Aaron Caldwell and Doug Nagy and our tech directors for TA and TA2, great people. But again, like when 40 TA2 cars show up and he's only got a couple of assistants, it's like Doug is grinding. So I want to be there for those guys. We've got a really cool plan to make a massive change with our social so that we can service every single one of our competitors, not just our podium. Really show. And I say this on our private calls. This isn't just blowing smoke. Our guy that finishes 25th is just as important as our podium. We need these guys to be happy. If you've got a podium with 3 guys on it and there's only 4 cars in the race, that class doesn't look impressive anymore. It's when these guys show up because they love Trans Am, they love how fun TA2 is, and whether they're having a battle, whether their battle is 18th through 27th and there's 9 cars nose to tail and they're beating each other up and having fun. They kind of, not that you don't care that you're in 18th or 27th or something like that, but they're having, could be having the race of their lives. And so that's what we need to support, get that exposure for them, show them that we do appreciate that. And at the same time, our series, it costs a lot of money to stream these things.
Oh, yeah.
We're spending a lot of money to put this out there so that these guys, their families can watch that and their sponsors can watch that. Our young kids can push this up to their potential sponsors and team owners and team managers that they're trying to impress. So there's a lot of balls in the air as we're trying to get stuff out. And it's a relatively small company trying to do a lot. And so I think we've got some great partners behind us with Velocity Capital. Tony Perella at the helm right now has been absolutely fantastic with me and guiding me to give me some advice along the way here. Michael Printup, who was from Watkins Glen, is now running technically CEO or whatever of SVRA. I can't remember the exact title, but he was running that, and he was essentially interim president for for Trans Am before I got in, as we had a little gap in the deal there. But it's I got great people to learn from and try to assist along the way as we try to guide this through. It's always rough waters when economically these things cost money, and we're trying to keep that down. Right. We've got plans for next year to try to cap a bunch of the costs and make this the most affordable stock car road racing series on the planet.
Yeah. When Wally Dallenbach Sr. took over as chief steward at IndyCar, one of the things, or CART, I guess it was called at the time, I'd seen several interviews, read several articles where he said that he had kind of instant cred with the drivers because he was a driver. And that's got to be important in your discussions when you have those heated discussions, that you know exactly where they're coming from. You've been in their shoes, and while you might not have a solution immediately, you have a different thought process when dealing with those interactions. Does that make sense?
Without a doubt. And to be honest, I was over the moon, thrilled / relieved with how I was received. I really was not sure. There's another guy that's come in without ever holding any other position in office and jumped into a presidency that gets quite mixed reviews on things. And so literally jumping from the driver's seat to the presidency of an organization with such a storied name like Trans Am, I was a little bit worried that people would be thinking, what is this guy doing here? He
Yeah.
doesn't deserve to be here. But by and large, and nobody that doesn't think I'm going to be there is going to shoot me a text to
Yeah.
say, "Hey, this sucks. I'm sad you're here." But the resounding texts and calls I got from team owners, team managers, and drivers in the series, and then even my friends in IMSA, some of the officials in IMSA, team owners and whatnot, were like, "This is you all day. Get it?" And they
Yeah.
know the kind of racing that I like. And again, super proud and honored to have done what I did on the IMSA side. Had a blast. It's been a mega thrilling adventure the entire time. But this is something, this seat here in Trans Am is where I think I can actually have the most amount of impact. And that really led to why I'm doing this, because I think I can contribute a lot here.
Yeah. When it was first announced, I let you be for a couple of days because I'm pretty certain that I was going to be very low on your priority list. But when we did finally connect, you said, "Yeah, my phone's been blowing up for 48 hours or 72 hours or whatever it was." Was there a text or a phone call that you got that really surprised you, or was there one particular or a couple particular people who reached out that really was like, "Okay, this makes sense"?
There was some cool, so I posted it on my Instagram, I posted it on my Facebook. Um, Ray Evernham sent me a quick note. That was so cool. Mark Martin, both congratulatory and like, this is the guy we need. And it was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Hearing from those guys. But and then a lot of my peers that on the driving side were super supportive.
Yeah.
I kept it. We had to keep it really tight for a while. So there were some friends that I didn't cue in on this, big, like my best friends, that I didn't cue in on this until like maybe 24 to 48 hours before the announcement. And so it's surprised. I loved getting each one of them individually together and dropping this news and seeing their reaction, because nobody saw this coming. So
Right.
Nobody would have guessed hey, he's retiring. What's he going to do?
Yeah.
Nobody would have picked this. And that actually makes it all the more fun. And like you said, we did the announcement at 3 p.m. on December 4th. I did not legit. I was on Zoom calls, interviews, staff meetings, but then my phone, I did not put my phone down for a minute. I was either on a Zoom call or on my phone until 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And it was any win, any whatever, anything, nothing came close to the next basically 3 days, 72 hours of nonstop. I mean, my workload increased tenfold.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew that going in, that this is going to be a life changer big time on that side of things. But it's been neat. I've been humbled by the positive response, and that's been very nice.
I think you have an advantage also because of all the series that you've been in, all the people who you've contacted with, all the people who you've met over the years. I'm sure you have, and as a networker, you have all their names and phone numbers in this little device here. You're going to have a whole encyclopedia of human beings who you can go to if you're presented with a situation and to get advice, maybe not always take their advice, but at least be able to be a sounding board. And that's got to be huge for you when you go into this situation, something that's pretty foreign to you, I'm sure, but it's going to be a great resource for you.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I reached out to a couple of them already, and they've been very helpful or very forthcoming and saying, "Yeah, man, drop me a line.
Nice.
You get in a pinch, you got something to think about, you need something to bounce off. Let's do it." And I've got an in-house staff and owner and boss that is the same exact way. They're super supportive and listening to what my visions and where I want to see the series go. And so it's good having that support from those sides. And in reality, also, I've spoken to so many team owners already, and so many of them have reached out, and that has been the nicest thing of all of this has been the teams and the drivers saying, cool, we've got a driver at the helm that can understand what we need as team owners, team managers, and drivers a little better. And my whole thing, and I don't think that our guys aren't capable of that we have right now. My whole thing all the time, and this is with every team I've ever raced with and whatnot, is proper communication.
Yeah.
Genuine, proper, clear, transparent communication to the point where I'd rather be over communicating and someone's like, I get it, than hope they got what I sent out a week ago. And like, so that's for me key. And I see usually the biggest weak link in most organizations that fail is a lack of communication. When you get disgruntled workers or you get pissed off people within the industry, it's because someone's not listening. And obviously there's some tough times and stuff that you just got to buckle up and do your deal. But there's other times where it's pretty free and pretty easy to make things a little more efficient for people that are really working their butts off.
Well, this is Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. So my last question is going to circle back. Go back to the early days in your time in your early years in racing in SCCA and tell us how important that foundation was to the Andy Lally of 2025, who's about to become president of who is now president of the Trans Am Series.
It's the foundation that you can get in the SCCA club racing is excellent. I mean, for me, it was the only way in for me, but I learned my foundation of my basic driving. I didn't know how to heel toe
right
when I first got in. And Walter would take me down the road and we'd drive around and I'd practice it and zing the hell out of gears and over rev and under rev stuff all the time. But I got to drive. You get the access to amazing tracks for pennies on the dollar relative to what it's going to be like at the places that you're aiming.
Right.
is the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
You've got good potential experience for pennies on the dollar. Club racing should never be overlooked in any form, whether SCCA or all the other options that you have out there. SCCA is great. It was a home for me very early on. But it was, you get amazing experience at some of the best tracks in the world.
I think that's a good place to put it and wrap it up here. Andy, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. You've been a good friend over the years, and I'm so thankful that G-Dub introduced us to each other and one more bit of his legacy for all of us, and good luck with the new thing, and it's been just a great conversation.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. Do you like what you hear? Subscribe to the RacingWire Podcast Network so you won't miss any episodes. Also, the Racing Network on YouTube. It would also be great if you leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. If it's a bad one, put it on someone else's social media. Ask us a question on Twitter. It is @RaceAnnouncer. There's a new Inside the SCCA every week. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a safe weekend and go play with cars.
Hi, I'm Dorsey Schrader, and this is Inside the SCCA.